Oh, that's a good little intro. I would say one of the things you could do in 2025 is have two mics, so you don't have to constantly pass this around. But we improve. We improve. When you get 1,000 subscribers, that's what's gonna happen.
You heard him, bro. 1,000 subscribers.
I'll gift your mic.
I'll gift him.
But yeah, I mean, the theme of this podcast is going to be around adulting. We're both around that age now where I would say is we can't get away with being shielded by the whole student shield, essentially. We are now officially adults. We have been for a few years. But I just wanted to, speak to you about what this means to you, like your thoughts on adulthood in general, what it is now versus what you thought it would be like when you was a teenager. So yeah, just talk me through that.
I mean, yeah, you're 100% right. It's weird to get to that age where now we're not adults. We're adults now. We're not even considered young adults. I think it's something I've been thinking about a lot because I watched this movie, and in the movie was kind of talking about how, like, the age of adult is not really like an age. It's more of like a feeling. You could be 22 years old and feel like an adult. And I was thinking for myself, like, when did I start feeling like an adult? I don't really know. I feel like at a certain age I started becoming more and more responsible for things. I started feeling like, okay, cool, like I need to do these things, and I'm not getting any younger. I think that's the mentality that you get. You go, oh, I'm not getting any younger. I have to do this. I have to do that. And so that's been like very difficult. Not difficult, but I think embracing that adulthood, embracing that has been like a challenging thing because no one really knows when you become an adult, but you definitely feel like you reach a certain point in your life where you have to make certain concessions. You have to let certain things go. You can't really act the same way. You can't really rely on your family as much. You gotta need to make those choices yourself. I think a large part of it is also like thinking about what you want from life. I think it goes hand in hand. When you start thinking, okay, cool, I'm an adult, it also then means like, oh, okay, like what does that mean for my life? What kind of life do I want to have? And I think that's been so super interesting. I know we talk about it all the time, innit? Like, man, like I feel like an adult, but I don't really, because I feel like there's so many things that I'm supposed to have accomplished by this age, but I know that I'm on a different path to everyone else. So like the path is like, it's mine and I'm walking that path. But also it's also difficult because the expectations of people around you now that you're an adult means that that really sometimes will affect your own choices. So that's been really like interesting to work out. And yeah, that's why I was like, yo, I want to talk to you about it because I know that we've both been thinking about that for a long time. But yeah, I don't know. It is really interesting age to be.
You mentioned like very briefly on how other people's thoughts on how you're meant to act around this age can sort of influence the decisions that you make. How would you say that that's changed as you get older? Do you put more weight on those external pressures, or have you had more of a clearer mind now that you're more older, or you have more wisdom where you make those decisions without that external influence?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think first off, yes, I think once you get a bit older, you start having more clarity about what you want, and you put less weight, I would say, on the external pressures of, say, your family or your culture. But also, I think you begin to see why they keep nagging you. You begin to see why they keep saying certain stuff, Like, for example, right, like cultural thing, right? My mom was always talking about how if I was in Ghana, I would be married by this age. If I was here, I would have been this already. And it's like, obviously, because I feel like I'm in two cultures, I don't really know which ones to adhere to. And I think that's the only external pressure that comes to. It's like, should I have been, it's always the question of should I have done this by this age? Am I supposed to have done this already? And, but no, I think also as you get older, you become more and more sure about what you want for your life. Yeah. I think the podcast is such a big thing for me because it's like, that was a choice that I made for myself, and like, I stopped thinking about what everyone else thought was okay for my life and started thinking about what I want. And then like, that's the responsibility that comes in it, where it's like, okay, cool, now that you've decided for yourself, if you fail, it's on you, if you succeed, it's on you. How are you going to show up in the world? What are you going to do to make sure that those goals that you have, those come true? I think definitely, to answer your question, I think it's a little bit of both, but definitely the second part.
So, well, for context, you're 26 now, right? When would you say that those feelings changed? What age?
Definitely after uni. I mean, a little bit during uni, because I remember us talking about this a lot, about like where we would be 5 years from now. That was like my favorite question. Like, what do you think you're going to be 5 years from now? We're at that age now, which is crazy, by the way. But no, it's like, no, it's true. It's like, we often used to say like, okay, what do you think you're going to be when we're 21? What do you think you're going to be at 25? And I think since then, I always thought like, man, like, I want to live a life when I was this age that I'll be happy with, you know. And I think it kind of is step by step. I think I felt it every year. So every year I get more and more clarity about the things that I want, but that means I have to let go of a lot of things. You know, I think like during the first year out of uni, I was like, okay, cool, do I want to be in this business course? So I let go of that. It's like, I don't really want to do business. So even though I got a job in it, I didn't really want to have this for my career. So I had to like get over that mentally, get over like the pressures that everyone else would say, which to be fair wasn't anything. People don't really care as long as you know what you're doing. And then like, okay, I want to do poetry. Okay, cool. Like getting into that space, like taking that step. You know, I want to do this. And I think year on year, definitely starting around like 21, year on year, it's been kind of like finding that comfortability within myself to look outside of the world and be like, actually, this is what I want. And I'm more comfortable in myself to actually do it. You know, and like it's a step-by-step process, but definitely started around that year. But it's weird too, because I don't even feel like I'm at that age where I have total clarity. You know, like there's a lot of things I have let go. There are a lot of decisions I've had to make. But I think it's funny because I remember asking you this question. It's like, what's the next big decision in your life? and it's like, yeah, I think that's kind of the age that we're at, where it feels like every decision we make has more of an impact in our life. It's like it's been times 10 almost, you know, everything's times 10. There's more leverage in the decisions you make, and so you have to take more time to think about that. You say but go on, what do you do?
I think you mean more repercussions if things were to go wrong. There's more risk to the decisions that you take now. For example, you're 26 now, you get married to the wrong person. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we're not that old, right? This is why, and it was going to segue into my next question as well. We always have a feeling that people around our age, 28, 29, they have it figured out. 30, they have it figured out. It's not linear. You know, there are certain individuals who do have that, quite lucky, or they have worked towards that to find that clarity. But it's not a guarantee. No one always has it figured out. I wanted to ask you, more importantly, where do you think that comes from? Is it a cultural thing? Is it a societal thing where we believe people have to, at a certain age, have to have things figured out?
Yeah, I think I can only speak for myself, and I think for me, definitely, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural and an internal thing. I think first for a cultural thing, it's like I was saying before about how in African culture you're expected to do certain things at a certain age because of the responsibility that the older people will put on you. And I've kind of had that since a very young age. Like, okay, you're supposed to do this by this age, and I've kind of followed that until I kind of decided to go on my own path. But I think it's kind of like infused in it. So obviously, because of the cultural thing, I've integrated that into myself when I kind of put pressure on myself to have it figured out by a certain age. You know, like I know definitely when I was 20 or 18, around that age, I thought by 25 I want to know what I want to do in my life. And I think I remember I was talking about this a lot because like, man, like there was a point where I didn't know what I would do in my life, and that bothered me like a lot. And so I'd read all these books, like I would do all these like different things. I would like be meditating, doing all these different things to kind of figure out what path I want to go on, because to me finding that path was way more important than what I was doing. And so like all that change, all that kind of like identity, like trying different identities and like figuring out what that path was very important. But you know, to answer your question, I think definitely it's more of a cultural thing, but also it shows itself in so many different ways, you know, because it starts with us cultural, because that's how we are taught when we're kids. Especially for me, I was taught as a kid to have certain things done by a certain age. I'm pretty sure it's same for you. But then as I get older and older and I feel less and less tied down by that culture, it becomes up to me. But because obviously that's how I've kind of grown up, it's still kind of infused in that, you know, like I have a lot of pressure on myself to have everything figured out by 30 years old. Like even now, I always think like, man, by 30 I shall have figured out. But I know 5 years ago I was saying that about 25. So it's like, it will keep going forward. But I think, well, the one thing that's good is that it feels like the more and more I go forward, the more and more I rely on the external pressures. Okay. You know, the external, like it's not really culture anymore, it's internal. But then also that means I have to figure out what I want internally. So then the things that I get, the things that I chase, the goals that I go for are aligned with who I am. To ask you a question, actually, like you just said about how I felt the same thing. Is it kind of the same thing for you? Do you relate to that idea of like the fact that it's cultural that makes us feel like we have figured out?
Yeah, I think culture obviously does play a part, only if you let it. obviously. You can choose to ignore it, again, circumstantial. If your family are very deep rooted in that cultural aspect and they are putting a lot of pressure, it's not easy. It's easy to fall into that cultural mode. But again, if you have that luxury of making that choice, you don't have to follow those cultural pressures. You can pave your own way. But then I was going to ask you later, but I'll answer your question at the moment. Would we prefer, like, if it was just left to our own, would it be a bit more chaotic? Because we got to pave our own way. Like, the one thing you can say about society and even the culture, they've sort of put rules in place so you can have like a goal in mind. Okay, I need to be getting married by this point, or I need to have kids by this point. If you didn't have that, would it be a bit more chaotic? Do you think life would be better if you didn't have these rules? Because you know how it is, right? Even now in life, when you're not working or when you're not going to school, when you don't have a routine, life can be very chaotic, even by not doing much, because you're constantly finding things to do to make that time go by. And oftentimes, if you're not very well disciplined, that can lead to so many bad things. Like, for example, recreational drug use. You know, it's an easy thing to get into. Look into uni students. You know, when they have a lot of free time, when they have a lot of free time, if they're not, you know, studying, it's common. It's okay. It's how you use that time as well. Again, like I said, going back on my point is, maybe it's a good thing that we have those societal pressures. It gives us an idea of, okay, we have to do these things in our life. We have to achieve them. We have to have kids. We have to have a family. We have to serve our community, this, that, and the other. Now, the one thing where I differ is it's your choice on whether you put an age limit on achieving those things. So, yeah, pushing it back to you, do you think we need to fixate on those almost imaginary walls that we're setting ourselves?
I think that's a very good question. I think it certainly depends on the individual, right? Because I think some people will look at it as if like it's a good checklist, because it is a good checklist. Like, you're 100% right. If you're not doing certain things by a certain age, maybe you should be looking at the reasons why. You know, it doesn't really say anything about you as a person, but it does say, like, if that's what you wanted, say you wanted kids by 30 years old and you don't even have a relationship by 29, then you should be looking at yourself like, why is that the case? Maybe I don't want kids by 30 years old. But I think the problem becomes when people take it as law, you know, as like they feel bad on themselves because of, again, they take the external pressure and they go, my mom or whoever said I should be doing this by this age, I'm not doing this by this age, and I feel less of myself. When I think it's great to have that as a guideline, but I think more important than that is to find within yourself the thing that you really want. I think that's what our 20s are for. When we're like teenagers, that's just us messing up over and over again. All the stuff that we probably shouldn't be doing, but we're doing anyway because we're just trying to find ourselves in the world. And then when you're 20s, it's like, okay, what do I really want? You know, like, you kind of do the work, internal work, to kind of get rid of all the stuff you did in your teens, and then Again, this is the point.
You're making it.
Exactly. You're making instructions for yourself, and then you're putting these kind of checklists and these.
It's helpful.
It is helpful, but then someone will be watching is 30 years old or older and being like, I haven't figured that out. I feel perfectly okay with myself because they've found that something else is more important to figure out than having kids. Maybe they found that they don't want to have kids, you know. So it's like these. I guess it depends on the thing it is and also where you are. But these guidelines are super important because they give us, like you were saying, is a routine. It's like a routine for life almost, you know. It's like you don't have to follow them, but they do help.
Yeah.
They do help you move forward in life. It's like if you go down the checklist and if you go from one to another, maybe you can actually make progression in your life. You know, if you set a goal at 18 and you're 30 years old and you haven't achieved that goal, maybe you can actually redefine that goal for yourself. So I think a large part of it is like, a large part of it is like realizing that these things are checklists and they're there to guide you. But also, what does it mean to you? You redefining those goals and those checkpoints, and then and then making your own kind of like rules and checklists and finding your way through that.
Another question to bounce off that point actually is if we bring the circle a bit closer to you, right? Let's speak about people that you know of in your life, your family, your friends. How has their input shaped how you draw these basically imaginary structure points in your life? Like, I have to do this by this age. Do you take inspiration from certain family members? Like, have they helped you maybe draw up a more clearer path?